It's not really about writing. It's about not letting a life disappear. Both of my parents lived remarkable lives. They grew up in a different America, faced challenges I'll never fully understand, made sacrifices for their family, and helped shape the person I became. Today, I have photographs of them. I know where they were born. I know when they were married. I know when they died. But there's so much I don't know. I don't know what they dreamed about when they were 20. I don't know what frightened them. I don't know what they considered their greatest success or their biggest regret. And I never will. Because they or we never recorded their stories. That realization made me ask myself a difficult question. What stories will my children and grandchildren never know, but want to know about me unless I tell them? My father lived an incredible life. He worked hard, raised a family, faced challenges I'll probably never fully understand, and helped shape the person I became today. But today, I can't tell you most of his story. I can tell you where he lived and when he died, but I can't tell you where he was born, what it felt like to be him, or what kept him awake at night. I can't tell you about his jobs or hobbies as a teenager. I can't tell you what dreams he gave up so our family could have a great life. I can't tell you what he hoped people would remember about him. I can't tell you what attracted him to my mother, because I never asked. I was too busy with life, and because he never wrote it down. I can't tell you what high school he graduated from, or if he played any sports or musical instruments in high school. I can't tell you who his best friends were growing up, what he loved doing, where he liked going. I don't know how he and his family survived the Great Depression. I don't know about his years in the military during World War II and the Korean War. He never liked to talk about it. And someday, someone may be saying the same thing about you. Every life is a history book. The problem is, most of those books are never written. The lessons learned, not passed down, only to be learned again and again. Now, I grew up with 5 brothers and sisters. I still have a handful of memories from our childhood, family dinners, holidays, playing together, and the everyday moments that seemed so ordinary at the time. But those memories are now surprisingly few. As we became adults, life took us in different directions. Most of us left home when we were about the age of 18. I was drafted in the Army, and from that point on, our lives unfolded on separate paths. We married, raised families, built careers, faced challenges and triumphs that many of us never fully shared with one another. Today, 2 of my younger sisters have passed away. Their stories, their dreams, their struggles, accomplishments, and the countless moments that made up their lives are gone forever. I can no longer ask them about the years we missed. I've become much closer to my 3 surviving siblings than ever before, and I treasure those conversations, but there are still decades of untold stories that none of us can recover. Those lost years have taught me something important. Every life is filled with stories worth preserving, but if we don't tell them while we can, they may be lost forever. Let me give you an example. A couple of weeks ago, I was talking with one of my sisters, and somehow our conversation drifted back to our high school years. She brought up the time our father threw me out of the house because I refused to get a haircut the way he wanted. It was during the height of the Beatles era, when longer hair was becoming popular. Dad still believed boys should still have a short military-style haircut. That's what he wanted. I refused, and he told me to leave if I didn't want to obey him. My sister smiled and said, I remember that. You stayed at one of your teacher's houses for a long while. I looked at her and said, nope. That's what everyone thought, but that's not what happened. I told her something she had never heard before. For almost 2 weeks, I was actually living in the balcony of my high school's gymnasium. After school, I worked cleaning classrooms, so I knew the building inside and out, all the security. When everyone had gone home, I'd crawl out through a basement window, pull it shut behind me so it looked locked, and I'd go out with the guys and have a good time until it was time to go back, where I'd climb up into the balcony where the old equipment was stored and spend the night there. Early the next morning, I'd head off to class as if nothing had happened. During gym class, I was able to shower and put on the fresh clothes, so it was no big deal. The grocery store was right down the street, so I was able to purchase any food that I wanted, no problem. My sister just stared at me. She had absolutely no idea. For more than 50 years, she believed a completely different story. That conversation made me realize something very important. Even the people who shared our childhood don't know all of our story. They know the parts they saw. They don't know what we were thinking, what we were feeling, what we feared, or what we experienced when no one else was around. If my own sister didn't know that story after all these years, how many other stories will disappear forever unless we take the time to tell them? I know there's a lot more. Even if you're a young adult, you should write your story before you forget. At 25, you remember your teachers, your first apartment, your first love, your first kiss, your first car, your first paycheck, your fears, your dreams, your wild and crazy party nights. I had a few of those. The arguments you had with your parents. And then how about if you have children? How about the day your child was born? What was it like? Were you there? Your child's first words, their first steps. What's the best and worst advice you've ever received? What goals in life do you strive for? Do you feel you've changed throughout the years, and how? What's the most valuable thing your parents taught you? And then, the day your parents died, what was your feelings? What did you say? What did you do? Will your grandchildren know what your first job was? Who made the biggest impact in your life outside of family? What was the hardest thing you had to overcome? Will they know your first heartbreak? The biggest mistake you ever made? You really want to tell them that? What was the happiest day of your life? Was there a day everything changed? What was the hardest decision you ever faced? What was your nickname in school? What was your favorite book or movie or music? What advice would you give to your 18-year-old self today? But at 75, many of those details are gone forever, not because they weren't important, because your memory fades. Nobody thinks their life is interesting while they're living it. 50 years later, it's family history, and there will be those that want to know. I don't care if you're 18, 35, 74, start writing it today, because 20 years from now, you'll wish you had. What would your great-grandchildren do to hear you tell your life story? Interesting thought. They won't have that opportunity unless you leave it behind. Every cemetery is filled with stories that were never told. My mother, my father, I loved them both, but there are hundreds of questions I'll never be able to ask. I can't go back, but I can make sure my children and grandchildren never have to say the same thing about me. My children and grandchildren don't need another piece of furniture or a paid vacation. They need to know who I was, not money, not possessions. Someday your voice will be silent. Your photographs will fade. The people who knew you best won't always be here. But your story can live forever. So don't wait. Write it, record it, tell it, because someone you haven't even met yet may someday treasure every word that you write. Write it because one day someone you love will wish they could ask you just one more question. Thank you. I'm Tim, and I wish you all the best.